And welcome to episode 27 of the Tuesday Talk IU Athletics podcast, joined by Director of Athletic Communications Larry Diehlman and Student Assistant Connor Kikowski. This is Sports Information Director Andy Alvarez, bringing you results and news from this past week's action and previewing the upcoming week in Immaculata Athletics. Last week, baseball earned a series win over Gwynn and Mercy. Men's volleyball will host a United East Conference playoff match this week. With a season sweeper of Holy Family, the flag football team is staying in the AEC playoff race. Women's lacrosse is heating up. Track and field saw some more personal and program records fall at the Lebanon Valley Blue and White Open. Tennis played Bridgewater and Pratt this past week. Softball went 3-3 last week, and men's lacrosse went 1-1. Let's get started looking back at the last week's results. Getting started with men's volleyball. The men's volleyball team went 1-3 last week, but they've clinched the fourth seed in the United East Conference playoffs. They will host Gallaudet on Thursday, April 2nd, here at Alumni Hall in the United East Conference first round of their tournament. Most likely be a 7 p.m. start. The Mighty Macs defeated Valley Forge in 5 sets on Tuesday, but fell to Cairn and Ramapo on Thursday and Friday, and then fell to Wilson last night. Versus Valley Forge, Nate Bailey led the team with 14 kills, 3 blocks, 2 solo, 1 assisted. Luke Dortenzo had 32 assists. Brandon Lieberman and Anthony Fitch each had 3 service aces. And Michael Prohl's 14 digs were a team high. Immaculata had led 2-0. Valley Forge fought their way back to 4th to 5th set, and the Macs won in the 5th set 15-12 to take the match. They still have one more non-conference match to play on Wednesday at 7 p.m. at Wilkes, and then they'll be home for that playoff match on Thursday. What are your guys' thoughts on the volleyball team qualifying for the United East Conference playoffs in their first year in the conference?
Yeah, really impressive for the volleyball team. For the longest time I've been here, men's volleyball was independent, so they didn't have a conference. So seeing them host a playoff match in their first year in a new conference is going to be big. Hopefully, we get a good crowd out there. Gallaudet was a dogfight the first time we saw them and went to 5 sets, so hopefully we can come on top again.
It'll be interesting to see how the men's team does with Gallaudet. You know, it was a tough 5-game match against them a couple weeks ago. It was a win, but it was definitely a dogfight. And yeah, like Connor said, hosting a playoff match in your first season in a new conference is definitely a great accomplishment. And we'll see how this team can do. You know, they've had a lot of great success with, their offensive options in Noah Zunski and Nate Bailey. And, Josh McGurl has been battling injury, but when he's on the court, he is definitely a difference maker. So can't wait to see what Thursday brings, and hopefully we can get a playoff win. Moving over to baseball. Baseball went 2-2 last week. They fell to Arcadia 19-3 in 7 innings, but they took 2 of 3 games over Gwynn and Mercy in a crucial AEC series. So against Gwynn and Mercy on Friday, it was at Gwynn and Mercy. 6-2 was the final. They went up 1-0 in the series for the Mighty Macs. Hunter Weitzel had a big day with 2 runs and 3 hits. Weitzel, Bobby Woodward, and Logan Barnt each had an RBI, and Thomas DeSarno went 6 2/3 innings on the mounds with 5 strikeouts, and he only allowed 1 earned run. The Griffins won Game 1 of the doubleheader on Saturday, 17-3 in 7 innings. It was a tough one, but the Mighty Macs bounced back with a 7-1 Game 2 win to clinch the weekend series. Logan Barnt had 3 runs. Nick Turnage, Danny Nacito, and Hunter Weitzel each had 2 hits. Danny Nacito added 3 ribbies, and Stephen Devaney took the pitching win in 6 2/3 innings and logged 3 strikeouts on the day. Danny Nacito put the game away essentially on a bases-clearing double down the left field line in the 4th inning. So Danny Nacito really coming up big on the offensive side, and on the defensive side, Stephen Devaney really pitched a gem in that second game. And for his efforts, Stephen Devaney was named to the AEC Weekly Honor Roll. Up next, the Mighty Macs will be at Penn State Abington today, March 31st at 3:30. They're in a 3-game stretch. They'll be taking on Swarthmore tomorrow, April 1st. That is a home game at 3:30. The Garnet are receiving votes in the D3Baseball.com Top 25 poll, and then they'll host Cairn on Thursday to wrap up their pre-Easter slate. So, guys, baseball, tough one against Arcadia, and that Game 2 against Gwynn and Mercy, but getting that weekend series was big, and Stephen Devaney really played well in that second game.
Yeah, that was good for baseball to had that bounce back after that tough first series with Marymount, where they had a good opportunity to take 2 out of 3 in that series, and possibly even almost all 3 in that series. To be able to get the win up at Gwynedd on Friday, then you're hopeful with your ace on the mound that you were going to be able to take that first game. It didn't happen, but they were able to get a big performance out of the Vannies. Get that win in the second game and take the series 2-1. That will serve them well, and it gives them a tiebreaker on Gwynedd and Mercy as you're fighting for one of 4 playoff spots in the conference.
Yeah, tiebreakers are huge, as we know. It's good to see Hunter Whitesell back too. He was bad on injury earlier this season. That's a big bat you want in the lineup, and he definitely had a good series overall. So good overall for the baseball team this week. Switching gears to track and field, men's and women's track and field compete at the Lebanon Valley Blue and White Open this past Saturday. There was a lot of good results highlighted by PRs and school records, and even a conference record. Starting off with Colin Corkery, who set a new Atlantic East Conference record and PR in shot put at 13.12 meters. He came in 10th in the hammer throw at 38.15 meters. That's a PR and an Immaculata record. Joseph Pierre Jacques won the triple jump event at 13.29 meters, which is an IU record. Thomas Smith came in 6th place in high jump at 1.72 meters, while Dylan Cruz came in at 7th at 1.62 meters. Dylan Cruz also placed second in the long jump at 6.05 meters. Aaron Cuthbert and Kevin Telesford both came in 8th in high jump and javelin, respectively. Cuthbert came in at 1.62 meters and Telesford came in at 42.69 meters. Maurice Franklin, Thomas Smith, Alexander Wilson, Kendall Budlow, and Jason Cantorino also PRs in track. And for his efforts and his performance this weekend, Colin Corkery was named the AEC Field Athlete of the Week. On the women's side, Abby Grillo broke her own program record in the 400 meters with 1 minute, 0.46 seconds, and won the event. Aubrey Donahue placed second in the 3K at 10:53.96. Jillian Humphreys took third in the high jump. Maggie Friend broke the IU record in the hammer throw. Maggie Friend and Abby Grillo were named to the AEC Weekly Honor Roll for their accomplishments this weekend. And the 4x1 meter relay placed 4th, while the 4x4 team finished 2nd. The Mighty Macs are off this week for Easter, but they will return to DeSales University for that invitation on Saturday, April 11th. That is Matt Murray alumni, so he's always happy to go back there. But a lot of good results for track and field this weekend.
Yeah, the records were off the charts this week. I mean, it was something writing that men's recap, and Colin Corkery setting not only a PR but a conference record is definitely a great accomplishment for him, doing that in shot put and doing hammer throw as well, putting an IU record in there. So he was everywhere this weekend. JPJ also in triple jump, winning that event. A lot of top 10 finishes, a lot of PRs, and even on the women's side too, Abby Grillo winning that event, breaking her own record. A lot of top places. Maggie Friend, hammer throw record. The relay teams did well. So a lot of great performances this weekend on both sides for the Mighty Macs. And, you guys definitely deserve a break for Easter before heading back to DeSales as we get closer and closer to the lovely outdoor championships that will be hosted right here at Draper Wolf Stadium. So a lot to look forward to with that.
Yeah, it was a good weekend. I mean, I wrote the women's article, and seeing obviously Abby Grillo's had a really strong start to her time with the track program, having set records in each of the 2 events that she's been in, breaking her own record again this week in the 400 meter. And then obviously Maggie Friend has been breaking some records this season as well with her throws and everything like that. So I mean, now in her junior year, she's been a consistent performer for the team. And then you have your usuals like Aubrey Donahue and the getting a second in the 3,000 meters. Jillian Humphreys getting a third in the high jump. The relay team coming in second, getting a second place finish in the relay. So that's a good start for the track program as they get a well-earned rest this weekend as they head into the upcoming events building up to the championships here in that first weekend in May. So it should be exciting.
Let's switch gears over to women's lacrosse. Women's lacrosse has been doing pretty good recently. After starting the season 0-8, they have won 3 of their last 4. They took a 12-7 win over Delaware Valley, fell 24-6 against Marywood in the AEC opener, and then dominated Notre Dame of Maryland 21-2, which was almost the single game program record, by the way. The single game program record for goals in a game for the team is 24, and the Mighty Macs scored 21. Against Delaware Valley, Alexa Marzak had 4 goals, Julia Pohl 5 assists, Kira Benoit and Alexa Marzak 7 ground balls apiece, and Kira added 3 goals herself. Elizabeth Mahmood had 3 assists, 2 cause turnovers, and 7 draw controls. Abby Guarneri made 12 saves, going nearly the entire time in the cage. And a 4-0 run in the third quarter was the difference maker. Notre Dame of Maryland, the game was essentially decided in the early first quarter. It wasn't really even close. Elizabeth Mahmood led the way, 7 goals, while Alexa Marzak had 6, so 13 goals between 2 players. Julia Pohl continues to pace the offense, 4 assists, and she won 6 draw controls, 3 ground balls apiece for Pohl, Mahmood, and Marzak, and just a lot of great stats across the board. Morgan Barnes, first 2 goals of her career. Bailey Knights, her first career point on an assist. And Abby Guarneri only played the first half, made a save, and then the backups got some chances with Claire Dunphy and Anna Monterosso. So it was a great game to see against Notre Dame and Maryland. The girls were having a great time. Coach Constantino was switching up lineups. Bailey Knights was on offense at one point. Julia Pohl was taking a lot of the draw controls, and it was just good to see, them having fun out there. Up next, after Easter, they will head to Marymount for a April 8th, 4 o'clock matchup to continue conference play. Guys, it's been good to see women's lacrosse get back in the win column. A lot of great performances, and Julia Pohl and Kira Benoit definitely have been contributing to this recent success.
Yeah, Marzak has been on that tear lately. She had 10 goals this week, so that's pretty good for her. Yeah, but that Notre Dame and Maryland game was fun to do yesterday. I interviewed Bailey and Kira Benoit after the game, and I said there is far too many people to interview for this game because everyone was pretty much contributing, and it was just good for our team who had a rough start, starting to get some wins in the win column.
Yeah, that was good. Obviously, we were thrilled to have our 2 podcast guests from last week be named to the Atlantic East Conference Weekly Honor Roll for their performances with Alexa Marzak and Elizabeth Mahmood. And yesterday, I was down taking photographs down by the field, and at one point, Elizabeth felt she was kind of like cross-checked down on a face-off, and it should have been a foul or run through on a face-off, and the ref didn't agree, and which led to Elizabeth scoring one of her. I'm just going to take it down now and score on you because I'm mad goals, which was nice to see, but also great to see so many different players get involved yesterday. Obviously, seeing them try to get, Riley Mullen, one of your seniors, who's always a defender, get her up into the play, and she got a beautiful setup goal off of a great pass from Julia Pohl. And you look at a real difference in this team the last couple of weeks. You adding in Julia Pohl and Kira Benoit from basketball. I mean, since joining the team through 5 games, Julia Pohl has 5 goals and 12 assists for 17 points. And Kira Benoit has 8 goals and 4 assists. Benoit adds in 17 draw controls, Julia 11 draw controls. You just see a difference, with them adding in additional, cause turnovers. And you're seeing other players now being able to move into different positions with the team that are helping the team. Obviously, that was a tough game against Marywood. That's one of the top teams in the conference. That top 3 in the conference, which are Marymount, Newman, and Marywood, are high end. Looking forward to seeing how Immaculata matches up with Gwynedd and Centenary in those conferences. They battle for that fourth playoff spot in the tournament. So it'll be interesting to see how things go, but it's good to see some real good matches and some more competitive matches for this team moving forward. Moving into softball, the Immaculata softball team went 3-3, including a doubleheader split with Marywood and to continue conference play this past weekend. They had gone 0-2 against Newman the previous weekend, so they moved to 1-3 in the conference play. They started the week up at Penn State Abington in non-conference, sweeping that doubleheader, winning 12-1 in 5 innings and 9-3 in the second game over Penn State Abington. They had a 5-run 5th inning that sealed game 1. They fell 6-3 in 8 innings and 11-4 to Ursinus, a very good Ursinus team on Thursday at home here. And then on Saturday, they won game 1, 13-12 in 9 innings over Marywood before falling 12-7 in the second game. In game 1, 5 players each had 2 runs scored. Alexis Andrada, 5 hits and 6 at-bats and 2 RBIs. four-way tie for 2 RBIs. Nadia Boya earned the win on the mound with 5 in the third innings in relief with 2 strikeouts. Kaylin Kuster not only tied the game with a RBI single in the bottom of the 7th inning to send it to extra innings, but then walked it off in the 9th inning with a RBI single to the right center field to win the game for the Mighty Macs. Real exciting time. Good to see the celebration after that game, and for the players to earn that first win. In Game 2, Kate Daly scored 2 runs. Jamie Green in Game 2 of the doubleheader had 2 hits and 2 RBIs, including her first collegiate home run. Sarah Pearson got started on the mound and struck out 2 batters in 4 2/3 innings work. It was 8-6 until the top of the 7th inning when Mary Wood scored 4 ones, to kind of pull away. Throughout the day, Riley Martin did hit a home run in each game for the Mighty Macs, including a real bomb on that second one in Game 2. There was gone off the bat. You knew it was gone, and it went pretty far over the fence. So it was good to see her bat come to life this week and see some power out there on the IU softball field. Alexis Andrada was named the Atlantic East Conference Player of the Week actually on Monday after a real solid week performance for the Mighty Macs. And then they open up today with a double header with Eastern on Tuesday, March 31st, playing at 3-5 out at the IU softball field, and then they're back in action on Thursday for a Atlantic East Conference doubleheader against Centenary, which we just have been instructed. The games will be at 12 and 2 on Thursday for the Centenary doubleheader, so they're moving up early, just so everyone's aware of that. New game times will be posted on the website for that. But a solid week for softball. What's your guys' thoughts?
That first game against Marymount was a marathon of a game, I'll tell you that. I got there late coming back from Lebanon Valley, and it was 4-4, and it was just a back and forth affair pretty much all game. And seeing after being down 12-10, and when Mary Wood hit that 3-run bomb, to be able to fight their way back and win it 13-12 is huge. Kaylee Kuster, we haven't seen a lot this year, was really a big bat that the softball team has this year, and they're definitely going to want to use her more often. Everyone pretty much contributed across the 2 games, including our 3 pitchers who were definitely throwing some gas out there, but it was good to earn a split in softball. It's going to help them in conference play.
Yeah, it's great to see they got that win. And I was statting baseball over, right next door with the Gwynn and Mercy series. And I'm looking at the scoreboard because from the baseball press box, I can see the softball scoreboard. And I'm like, they're still going. And I see the score just keep going, and they're hitting double digits, and it's like 8th, 9th inning. And I'm like, man, which of these games is going to finish first? Because for baseball, the first game, unfortunately, went a little longer because Gwynn and Mercy was getting a lot of runs. But, it was like, which one of these games is going to finish first? And, see that, walk off, that was pretty good. And hopefully they can keep that momentum going against Eastern and Centenary this week. Eastern, number 25 ranked in the country in the National Fast Pitch Coaches Association poll. So tough opponent, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that was kind of a crazy day Saturday with all the events we had going on. Come running over across the area out there with all the gear from coming from the women's lacrosse game, trying to get over to softball in time. But our sports information staff, we managed to get assistance and get through all our games on that crazy Saturday.
Yeah, definitely a crazy day indeed. Switching gears to men's lacrosse, who went 1-1 last week. They had a tough win over Albright and then faced a tough loss to Marymount. Against Albright, 11-8 was your final score. Jason Smarin and Matthew Frame each netted 3 goals. Smarin also added 3 dimes. Carnell Lofton Jr. was cooking on the faceoffs. He won 21 of 22 attempts and collected 19 ground balls. Both the faceoff wins and the ground balls are IU single game program records, so he was having a good day last Wednesday. Matthew Ludlow also made 13 saves and goal and caused 4 defensive turnovers. Against Marymount in an AAC championship from last season, it was a heartbreaking 7-6 double overtime final. Ryan Gorman and Nick Senator each logged 2 goals. Assists went to Gorman, Smarin, and John Stelaccio. Colton Rose, Gael Alvarez, and Colin Woke caused 2 turnovers defensively. Ludlow added 18 saves and 11 ground balls, and Ludlow is now the IU record holder in career saves, a record that has stood for 16 years. For his efforts this past week, Jason Smarin was named the AEC Player of the Week. Matthew Ludlow would earn the AEC Weekly Honor Roll. Up next, they are off this week due to the Easter holiday, but they'll be at Marywood Wednesday, April 8th at 7 p.m. So the Marymount game was obviously a tough loss. I mean, you fought your way back into it. Smarin tied it with 19 seconds left off a Matthew frame. It was like kind of like he shot it, then it popped right out of the Marymount's goalie's net, and then it went right back in. And Smarin was able to put it right back into the net, but definitely a tough loss in double overtime against a really tough opponent.
Yeah, it was a tough loss to Marymount. It was just back and forth, and you had that tying goal in the waning seconds of the fourth quarter. It was a shot, and then it was like a ricochet back in to tie the score at 6-6. Nobody scored in the first overtime. Double overtime was the deciding factor, though. Just great all-around performance. Matthew Ludlow with another masterclass, being the new career record holder is definitely a great accomplishment, especially since it's taken, a decade and a half to break that record. So congrats to him. But the Albright game, though, was definitely a good one as well. Slow start, but they were able to pull away at the end. And Carnell Lawton Jr. was, I don't know, he woke up that morning and said, you know what, I'm breaking some records today. But, he really just was absolutely on fire in the face-offs, against his opponent. Like every face-off looked the exact same. It was like a little tussle. The ball went Cardinals' way, just scooped it right up. It was like carbon copy every single play. And after a while, I pulled up the record book and I'm like, this has got to be a record, right? And he was getting closer and closer, and I'm like, yeah, there it is. And, what an outstanding performance by him. So hopefully they can bounce back against Marywood after Easter. Obviously, 0-1 so far in conference play, but there's still plenty of time. And we won't see them again at home until April 11th for Senior Day against Gwynn and Mercy. Only one home game for men's lax this month. Very odd, but hopefully they can get it done on the road too.
Yeah, I would say, Wednesday's win over Albright was a struggle, but they fought their way through it. Was able to, come out, with the victory. Carnell was outstanding. Then, Friday that was a slugfest, and defensive struggle. Both teams, battling to the end. Unfortunately, just a tough turnover, led to a fast break goal for Marymount. Not much Matthew Ludlow could have done with that one, but he made some incredible saves and really carried the team through a portion of that game when it remained tied for a long time. And then obviously Smarin's goal, put the shot, goal, popped up in the air. Smarin comes in, jumps up, catches it, and throws it in the net on the way down. It was an incredible moment to see. And then both teams had opportunities in the overtime, just weren't unable to convert until, that goal. And, you get, obviously Smarin gets the Player of the Week honors this week for the conference. He's been on the honor roll numerous times already this year. After a couple straight weeks as the defensive player of the week, Matthew Ludlow's on the honor roll again. This proves that, where they are. And, this is going to be a battle. Obviously, there's only 5 teams still playing lacrosse this season, and with Centenary shutting down their season for the year. So the battle for the 4 playoff spots in the conference and then trying to get a home game in that semifinal is important. So you're going to want to come out strong against in your remaining games against Marywood, Gwynedd, and Newman. So those are going to be important games for the men's lacrosse team going forward. But it was, I referred to it. I was having a discussion with the Marymount SID yet on Sunday during the flag football things. We were emailing back and forth, referred to it as Friday night's instant classic. That game, so that was an interesting, definitely a fun game to be at and everything like that. So we're looking forward to it. Moving along, speaking of that, moving along to flag football. The women's flag football team actually went 1-2 last week in their competition. There was supposed to be 2 try matches, but the match with Marywood scheduled to be played over at Eastern was postponed and will now be played later in April here at Immaculata. So they missed their single game against Eastern. Unfortunately, they fell to Eastern 45-0, and then went down to Marymount on Sunday for that try match and found themselves in a real lockdown struggle with Holy Family in that game. They were able to defeat Holy Family 14-7. Holy Family scored early in that game, and then Immaculata was able to kind of fight their way back when Eliana Zatkowski with a pick 6 in the second quarter, 63-yard return for a touchdown to tie the game, and then she later caught an 18-yard pass, taking it to the 1-yard line that set up Devin Cosgrove's 1-yard run for the go-ahead score. And then the Immaculata defense was able to lock it down. Cosgrove went 11 for 19 for 83 yards passing and interception. J.R. Lawler ran 5 times for 30 yards. Zakowski had 4 receptions for 44 yards and 2 interceptions in that game. J.R. Lawler also made 11 tackles, 10 of which were solo, and 3 tackles for a loss. Frankie Brunkel, Natalie Dodd, and Teresa Joppa each contributed 6 solo tackles in the game where fortunately they fell to Marymount 27-0. That game did remain close for a long period of time, as Immaculata was just really unable to get anything going offensively in that game. D held it strong. It wasn't really until the fourth quarter that Marymount put that game away. So it was a battle for her efforts for the week with all her tackles, like 15 total tackles, 14 solos for Tiara Lawler. I think it was 5 tackles for a loss. She was named to the AEC Weekly Honor Roll for her efforts this week. So that was a good performance for Tiara. They'll be up with a pair of tri matches this week. Today they'll be up at Centenary taking on Penn State Schuylkill and Centenary, and then on Thursday the same 3 schools will meet at Penn State Schuylkill for another tri match between the teams. So these are all important games for playoff seeding. So Immaculata is going to be hard pressed to try to come out with as many wins as possible out of these 4 games this week. So I know they're a little banged up, but they're going to be trying to fight their way through and try to take as many wins as they can. As Coach Coddington was telling us before he left, is they're getting ready to get on the bus to head to Centenary. So what's your guys' thoughts on flag football?
Yeah, definitely running into the Eastern game, there was not much you could do. Both games, actually, not much you could do about. I mean, the defense is definitely holding strong. I mean, seeing the defense of Brookwell, Dodd, and Teresa Joppa, they're locked solid, and they definitely know what their task is. But, there's some offensive struggles right now, and it shows you might have to start changing things up. They're beat up right now. You got Malinini battling some injuries. Devin got some injuries this past week, so it shows that they're going to have to battle through some things as we get closer and closer to the playoffs.
Switching over to our final section with men's and women's tennis. The men's and women's tennis teams played twice this week and fell to Bridgewater and Pratt. Obviously, Pratt being a conference matchup. For the men, it was 5-2 against Bridgewater and 4-3 against Pratt, so a tight one there. Against Bridgewater, Pat Arnold and Alex Corsones, a hard-fought 7-5 doubles loss. Nick Brown won in number 2 singles, 4-6, 6-4, 10-6. Patrick Arnold, 6-2, 6-2 with a win in number 3 singles. Pratt, Easton Ragnow, and Patrick Arnold came up just short, 6-4 in doubles. Patrick Arnold, Nicholas Brown, Alex Corsones, each winning in singles. For the women, 6-1 against Bridgewater and a 7-0 sweep with Pratt. With Bridgewater, Sophia Carey and Elizabeth Madsen won 6-2 in doubles, and Sophia also won in number 3 singles, 7-5, 6-3. Laura Farrow and Ashley Badajian were defeated in 3 sets in singles. Against Pratt, Laura Farrow and Ashley Badajian fell 6-4 in doubles. Athena Criticson put up a good fight in a 7-5, 6-0 singles defeat. Both teams will take on DeSales at DeSales on Thursday, April 2nd at 3 o'clock before Easter break. So, guys, tennis, some tough losses this week, but a good showing on the men's side. The men have had a tough season. Good to see them competing against Pratt, and hopefully we can get some good results with DeSales.
Yeah, that was I was out there for the men's match against Bridgewater last week, and there was some competitive matches. One of the Bridgewater players he liked to let everybody in the court know when he broke. I was a break on court 2, trying to fire up his guys, and I was very happy to see Nicholas Brown come back and win that match against him later, because it was kind of fun to have a little bit of a fiery competition that you don't normally see on the tennis court. But it was good to see him battle back, and there were some good matches out there, and they played some good teams, and hopefully, things will, as they move along in the season, continue to improve. I think now would be a good time to transition to our interview this week. We're going to be trying something a little different for the first time. Connor will be conducting the interview, and he'll be interviewing Larry and myself about how we got into sports information and our life in sports information, and kind of give everybody a little insight to what we do in our jobs, and about getting into the field if people are interested, and where how we got to where we got to, and what people can do. We'll be back with Connor taking over to conduct this interview when we're back from this quick break on the Tuesday Talk IU Athletics podcast.
Welcome back to the Tuesday Talk IU Athletics podcast. We're going to do something different here this week for our interview. I will be interviewing our two hosts, Andy Alvarez and Larry Diehlman, about their careers in sports information and what their jobs entails. So, guys, first off, how did you both get into this field and what inspired you to get into this field?
Well, I had worked previously in sports and athletics when I first got out of college. I was in minor league baseball for a while, and then worked at University of Delaware in the ice rink business out in Michigan. Then I got into work at the University of Delaware, and then worked in a couple of different sports facilities before leaving the field and spending, I guess, about 16 years in patient customer service for Quest Diagnostics and TransUnion before that. Well, I decided at one point that I was, looking to get forward to getting back to doing what I really enjoyed doing, which was working in sports. So I started a master's degree program during that time at my previous job, working on a master's of public administration with a graduate certificate in sports information or sports management and athletic administration at Westchester. And, working there, I got to know good friend of mine who was in the classes with me, who's over at Larry Messler, who was a Immaculata alum and was the sports information director after he finished his degree. He was a grad assistant at the time when I met him at Westchester. Before he went back to Westchester, where he is now as the assistant sports information director, he was sports information director here at Immaculata. So when it came time for me to do my internship, because I was a little behind because I was only doing one class at a time, I did my first internship here at Immaculata, and then spending most of the time in sports information with him and game and event operations. So got real good experience, learned a lot about sports information in that time. And then I did my second, because of the pandemic slowing things down, I did my second internship in 2022 in the winter into the spring at Westchester University. Larry was there, but I did more game operations and event operations. And then I graduated in May. I thought I had a job coming to me at Westchester that I was up for. Unfortunately, I got beaten out by another candidate that had a different experience set than I had. But they kept me on part-time and gave me a chance to continue to work for them. And then August of 2022, Larry, I was over there to work a couple events for them at Westchester, and Larry told me, hey, you should apply to Immaculata. They need a sports information director. He goes, Sean Nestor, who was there, was going to be leaving, and they needed somebody quick. So I kind of submitted a resume for the job. The next morning, Jason Hyman, who was the assistant AD at the time, who I also interned under while I was here, also a Westchester program graduate, called me up or said, hey, is there any way you can do an interview today? I said, well, I had to be at Westchester at this time to work volleyball tournament. So I did a Zoom interview because it was just past the pandemic time. Still doing a lot of Zoom interviews then. So I did a Zoom interview with him, Paul Murphy, and Claire, who was the track coach at the time here. And it was a really successful interview, went really well. And 5 minutes later, I got a call from Paul Murphy offering me the job. So I went to Westchester, told them I got the job. They're like, oh, we got to get them off all the schedules, and happily put in my 2 weeks notice at my job that next Monday, and kind of started working both jobs over that next couple of weeks when you were just starting here at the time, Connor, and was coming in working till 3 at my previous job, then coming in here to get trained by Sean before he left, and took over, started helping with events with my former assistant director, Connor Boyd. And that's how I kind of got back into sports information and really have found the job that I kind of wonder why I was doing anything else all that other time. So that's kind of my story with it.
I'd say for me, the way I got into this field was a little bit unusual, but still kind of cool in a way. I was finishing up my time as a student at Rowan University, and this was fall of 2022. I graduated a semester early because I had taken some courses in high school, specifically German. I had taken some German courses that doubled up as college credit. So I came into college and like every semester was 15 credits. I came into college with 9 credits, so I was kind of ahead a little bit. My final semester at Rowan, fall 2022, and I'm like, well, I better get started on looking for jobs because I'm going into the middle of the semester, like into the job market, and I'm not going to have anything. So I had actually worked as a student worker at Rowan Athletics, panning the camera like so many of our great students do for us at our games. And I was like, you know what? Let me apply for some athletics jobs. Let me see, I'll email some schools in the area because I figured, if you just go on LinkedIn, if you go on a regular application, you're one of 1,000 names. I figured if I emailed some people, I'd stand out a little more. I'm emailing schools in the area just like, hey, I'm about to graduate. do you have like an entry level job for somebody like me? I have two bachelor's degrees. One's in sports communication and media, and the other one being in journalism. So I'm like anything in sports journalism, kind of like an entry level role. And a lot of schools were like, no, we don't have anything, but we'll keep your name on file. Thanks for asking, that kind of stuff. Finally, Widener University gave me my first break, and they were like, yeah, we have something for you. So I ended up being an athletic communications and operations assistant, which basically is an assistant sports information director. And I got my first real role there. I was there for about a year and a half. It was a great experience. It was kind of rocky at the beginning, though, only because I did not know anything about sports information. I was a blank slate. Like, I obviously have watched sports and played sports, but I did not know anything about sports information. I didn't know how to stat games. I didn't know what sidearm was. And for those of you who don't know, sidearm is the back end admin side of our website, gomightymax.com. And a lot of athletics programs use sidearm. I didn't know how to use sidearm. I did not know anything. But thankfully, our SID over at Widener was very patient with me. And, I got through it and really learned the craft. Then it was time for me to leave Widener. It was just that time where I felt that it was good to transition out of there. And I did the same thing. I was emailing schools in the area. Do you have something for me? Hey, I have experience this time. No, we'll keep your name on file, blah, blah, blah. I got a email back from Delaware State University, which is a Division I institution down in Dover, Delaware. And the SID over there was like, yeah, I got something for you. So I was able to go in there, and after a few title changes, my title was Sports Communications Manager, which is, again, an assistant SID, basically. And I was there for 8 months at a Division I institution. I got more experience. I was able to do things, instead of doing things always as like a team effort, I was able to learn things by myself too, which was beneficial for me. And then before Delaware State, I actually applied to Immaculata in 2024. I did not get the job then, but I saw in 2025 the job was open again. I put my name back in the application process, and I got it the second time, which I was very happy about. I would say my career has been not a usual one, instead of just throwing my name out in the application world, but it's been a great experience so far in my career, and I've been in some great institutions, and it's good to be here.
So, Andy, how did you go from coaching youth hockey to SID work?
Coaching was something that I had always intended to kind of get into from my time playing ice hockey, even when I was playing at what they call as the ACHA, American Collegiate Hockey Association club level of college hockey. Since hockey's a expensive sport to fund, in college, I displayed an aptitude for the game and an interest in coaching and everything like that, and be able to see things within the game and help with the team, with sometimes even helping make coaching decisions at times when I was playing, with things I would see in the game. And athletic coaching was my minor in college. So I always intended to get that, and I always wanted to give back to the game of hockey. But when I left sports, I continued coaching, and it was my way to stay involved in sports. Even though I had left the field of athletic administration at the time in favor of a normal work week and a different existence of working Monday to Fridays, and allowed me a lot more time to coach, experiment with some different types of positions, get more involved in coaching, and more time on the weekends available to it. And it was something that really was satisfying. But as time moved along, you have a shelf life in coaching, and you do it at times, and it gets hard. There's a lot involved in it, particularly coaching at the youth levels. They pay you a stipend, but more times you end up spending your own money to do what you want to do with it. So I always wanted to. I thought about it, and I resisted. I let too many people tell me I couldn't do it, and but then I decided to commit to going back to sports, knowing that while I was working on the master's degree, once I finished the program, I probably was going to have to step away from coaching if I wanted to get back into this field full time. So I kind of prepared for it. And then, unfortunately, some things have happened within the coaching world. You have a situation develop where, I had a player get a serious injury in the game, and it just kind of pointed me more and more towards the direction that I wanted to move, needed to kind of step away at some point. And then, I had a very successful season coaching with my friends, and we had an incredible season. We went to nationals. Team went 61-8-2. Finished seventh in the country. Everything you could have hoped for in a season. And I was thinking, and I had family members pushing me, saying, "Hey, now would be the time to get out." Then this opportunity opened in Immaculata, and I had to go to my friends and say, "I need to step out." And it's the time. I knew it was time. It's time to step away from the coaching end, something I enjoyed, but I did everything. I did it for 25 years. And it was something I knew I wanted to give back to the game, and I did that. I was successful. I helped several players move on to higher levels of hockey and in the good places in colleges and life and everything like that. I was very satisfied with that. And, it was just a matter of committing to entering this, wanting to be a part of this field again and step in. And, while I miss the game of coaching and everything like that, I miss being around the game. I stop over and see friends from time to time. I always get asked if I want to come back. I knew it was time, and I'm happy I made the decision and would not trade it for the world right now.
So, Larry, for you, what's the difference between working Division One, which you did at Delaware State, which you talked about in the first question, versus Division Three at Widener and Immaculata?
It's an interesting transition, believe it or not, going from Division One and Division Three. The way I went from D3 to D1 back to D3. You might not believe it, but working Division Three, there's actually a lot more that you have to do personally than at Division One, which might seem weird given that Division One, gets arguably the most attention. You're seeing it right now with March Madness. The stadiums get filled up and there's so much that has to be done. But D3, you have to do a lot more. So I'll give you an example with Widener and Immaculata. Game day setup, you're in charge of the stats, obviously. You're in charge of the PA. You're in charge of making sure the scoreboard's up on the field or on the court. And you're also in charge of the live stream. You're doing all that, make sure it's done, versus at Division One, where you might not be necessarily responsible for everything. It might fall on somebody else. At Immaculata here, Andy and I are basically the co-media contacts for all 22 of our teams. When I was at Widener, I was the media contact for 5 teams. I was in charge of men's and women's soccer, women's basketball, women's lacrosse, and baseball. So those were my teams that I would stat. I'd make sure I'd get those games moving and write in their recaps, stuff like that. Delaware State, kind of the same thing. However, live streams weren't necessarily our problem. At Delaware State, they have 2 main conferences that they are in. The MEAC, which is the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, is their main one, and their alternate is the NEC, the Northeast Conference. The MEAC, a lot of their teams were on ESPN Plus or ESPNU, right? So for basketball, for example, we never had to worry about a live stream. Now, you guys here at Immaculata for our student athletes, and we're always having kids on the production truck laptop, like controlling the scoreboard and stuff. At Division One, there is literally a truck sitting outside of the stadium or the arena or whatever with directors and producers and 1,000 cords and wires. There is a literal truck sitting outside with all the cameras and the director, and that's why it's called a production truck. All I had to do, if I'm statting a game, let's say I do basketball for Delaware State, live stats. That's all I had to do. So that was for the MEAC teams. But for the NEC, we streamed on a platform kind of like the Atlantic East Network for Immaculata. For the NEC, it's called NEC Front Row. So when I was doing baseball or women's lacrosse at Delaware State, I had to do what we do here at Immaculata, is hook the camera up and make sure it's, get it sent to the Northeast Conference and just make sure everything was running smoothly. So Division One, you're not as hands-on with things. You still are, but like not to the extent of Division Three. And Division One, I also had media contacts. Division One media contacts are more of a thing than D3. D3, it depends on the school, like how many SIDs are there, how many sports. Maybe if you have like football, for example, you might have like multiple like secondary and tertiary contacts just because it's such a large to do. At Delaware State, I was the media contact for women's soccer, women's lacrosse, women's tennis. And yes, we had horses. We did equestrian as well. So I was the equestrian contact for them as well. So I had 4 sports, and I was hired at Del State after soccer had ended. So I really was not as hands-on with them. Lacrosse and tennis and equestrian, I was. That's, I would say, is the main difference with D1, D3 is just, I'm not saying at D1 you don't do as much work. It's more so that there are a lot more people in the department versus D3 where like game day setup is different. I feel like in D3, I do like the fact that you're more hands-on. It feels like, you're contributing more than Division One because it was weird going to Del State and realizing, oh yeah, I don't have to set up a live stream. It's definitely different, but I definitely enjoyed my time at Delaware State.
You mentioned the production truck that you guys had at Delaware State. I remember when I first started working here, I did ball run and I did production truck. And the first time I did production truck was for a women's basketball game. And I remember I had no idea what that was. I was literally looking for a truck somewhere. And I asked Claire, who was the track coach at the time, who was game manager, and I'm supposed to be on this production truck, but I don't see a truck. She's like, oh, it's just a live stream. So I felt stupid then, but it's okay though. It shows the main differences between the levels in which you compete at. But
Hold up, hold up 1 second. To explain what the program that we used for that is, it was called Blue Flame Production Truck. Huddle since bought Blue Frame's production truck, so it's part of Huddle now. But that is the name is production truck is the name of the program. That's how it gets listed on the schedules as production truck.
yeah, and I just did not know that at the time. I was literally looking for a truck at the basketball game. I'll never forget that. But this is a question that I get asked all the time. What is a day-to-day schedule for game days versus 9 games? Everyone always asks me, what are we doing up in the press box during our games? I'm like, it is not as easy as you all think. So please feel free to explain.
For non-game days, if there's days we're here, there's a non-game day. Our normal hours during the week in season on a non-game day would be 8:30 to 5 p.m. And we're coming in, we're preparing stuff for all the games going on coming ahead, whether it be writing game previews, checking, make sure all stats were put in correctly from other games. If we have road games, we need to get rosters out ahead of time and stat files ahead of time to other schools, or getting them from the other schools, creating scripts. We get communications from the conference in the beginning of the weeks about player awards and everything like that, preparing, things for the releases, the writing stories, graphics, generating game day graphics for the upcoming games ahead, making sure everything, if there's any changes to schedules, getting those updated. So we keep busy on our usual 8:30 to 5 basis. Sometimes some certain things may keep us here later, or we'll have a staff meeting on Mondays with the whole staff to go over everything for the week ahead. And then game days, it really varies on depending upon what are the times on the game days. A weekday game day, depending upon if it's 4 or 7 or double headers or multiple locations, we'll try to come in later. We'll try to stagger our day, shorten it up. So if we have a 7 o'clock games, we'll come in around 1 o'clock. Sometimes I tend to gravitate in a little bit earlier to make sure, regardless if we're in here or not, we got to get the game day graphics posted in the morning for the day. So we get those out on social media so everybody knows there's a game that day. Then we'll come in, we'll make sure we'll have all the scripts and everything ready to go for the games. And then we'll try to head out to the venue that we're going to be at, or venues we're going to be at on that day, to set up for live streams and everything like that ahead of time. Make sure, help make sure everything gets set up at the facility for the games, and just be ready for when the teams arrive. We go get starting lineups. If one of us is statting, we're setting up our statting computer as well to stat the individual games. And, we'll work as well as we can together to get things done. Following the games, depending upon the results, we got to break everything down at the venue, bring it back in here, post the files, write recaps, and sometimes gets a little later when time we get done, particularly during basketball season when you're dealing with the double headers and things like that. Weekend games, depending upon when things start. Obviously, this past Saturday we had a lot of events, so we were in early to be ready for an 11 a.m. start. Actually, no, we had a 9 a.m. start this past Saturday with tennis, so that was an earlier start. So we had to make sure we had what they needed. We don't have a whole lot of responsibility for statting until after the match in tennis. We also had to make sure we had everything going for the other events, and there could be a situation where I was going to have to move from one event to the other event afterwards. So making a plan for how we were going to cover something until I could get over there to set up to cover that event as well. And then when we come in, we send out the stat file to the other team. We upload any stat files we got from other schools, make sure we get them into the system so all the stats are in, and then we sit down and start writing stories and recaps and everything like that. Usually Larry and I will have a system worked out as to how who's gonna write what recap for what, who's gonna make, if we need wing graphics made, who's gonna generate those, get them posted. Anything we see that may be wrong in anything, make sure we got to export the live stream video, send it to the coaches so they could upload it to their whatever league shared thing they may have for video and everything by the deadlines to get that in. And when we have road events if we have non-home game road events, those games recaps still have to be written. So we'll work out a system of who's who's going to write the recap for what event when it's on the road. Like yesterday, Sunday, technically was an off day for us, yet we had a flag football try match on the road. So I was the one, I said I would cover that. So I was, prepared to watch the live stream, get the statistics files, and, write the recaps for that. And then on Sundays, we do our nominations for the conference. Usually they have to be in by 10 a.m. for conference awards on Monday. There's something to do just about every day in our field. It just depends. Sometimes we do get off days, and we do get an off weekend where we just don't have anything to do, which is nice. But we do keep busy throughout the year. Then in the summer, nice thing is we're basically 8 to 4:30 in the summer, 4 days a week here in Immaculata, which is nice from the end of the semester till August, and then we go back to the 5-day work week and everything. So that's kind of what our days look like here in sports information.
Larry, do you want to give us a sample of stat call from a sport you sat? Jump ball, hell ball, anything like that?
Oh, yes. I know the box scores look cleaner than they actually are, but you see Connor and I at the stat table or the press box sometimes, and you might hear us barking calls at each other. So I'll give you one for basketball. When you have NCAA live stats, which is so much better than some of the other programs that are available for SIDs. You have the court diagram and you got to click all these buttons to say like where the ball is, what type of shot. So for example, if you've made shot by Carly Coleman, so you'd say like you'd click on the court where it is, 2-pointer by Carly Coleman, 2-pointer by 22 is good, jump shot, assist, let's say the assist was Olivia Etor, so assist 33. And then let's say, for example, we had a double turnover, and let's say we get the second one. So we have the other team. You have I'm making up numbers here, like turnover 2, lost ball, steal by 3, and then, turnover 3, lost ball, steal by 22, Carly Coleman, layup 22, fast break, no assist. So it's really just like a bang, bang play. Lacrosse can also get weird when, with the extra stuff, like if you have like a turnover 2, caused by 3, ground ball 42, and then successful clear or unsuccessful clear. Sometimes the calls can get ugly if it's like a bang bang sequence. Abbreviations definitely help. So instead of like the fast break layup, Connor and I would just say like 30 all the way, and we knew what that meant. Baseball, softball is really easy because the game moves at a pace where you can kind of keep up and the plays are not that difficult. Lacrosse sometimes can get weird. Basketball is just so fast. Flag football, I was introduced to that this year, and I did not expect that to be as wild as that is. And hopefully that program, the stat program, will get cleaned up in the next couple years as it grows. But definitely something that I don't think everybody knows about, but, you'd be surprised at what it entails.
And the Connor Kikowski special of Please Hold.
Sometimes you can't always see those numbers out there. You gotta wait a little bit 'cause everyone's moving. Sometimes you never know. The weather sometimes affects things like that fog during flag football. Couldn't see anything.
Or you get 3 turnovers in about 20 seconds like we did in that one lacrosse game last week.
I usually say during basketball season, because Connor was so new to statting basketball, I'd like bark all these orders at him, and I'd be like, "Did you get all that?" And he was like, "Yes," or he'd be like, "What was that last one?" So it takes a minute. And volleyball, I forgot volleyball too. Volleyball takes a few minutes to kind of get the hang of it, but yeah.
For me, volleyball this year, I actually helped out and scored 2 Division I women's volleyball matches at Villanova this year, hiring out when they needed assistance, kind of freelance work. And it's a lot quicker game when you get up to that Big East Division I level like that in a 5-set match. It was a lot of fun, but it kept you busy.
Yeah, it is not an easy job, ladies and gentlemen. Let me tell you that. So to wrap things up here, what are some words of advice for anyone looking to get into the SID profession or even sports in general?
I would tell them to get started as soon as you can while you're in school. Go to your athletic department. We're always looking for interns in athletics. Anybody that can help us out, get experience, and it's a great opportunity to get experience. So go to the athletic department if you have interest in sports information. Sports information, people are always looking for assistance. There's always jobs, things you could help take off the hands of a sports information directors in season when they're strapped. Most sports information directors will always take intern help when they can get it. It's a good chance to get in there and see if this is what you really want to get into, your field that way, and you get you experience, particularly if you have aspirations to, work at the higher levels. And then I would tell you, if it's something you want to do, give serious consideration to possibly going to get your master's degree right after you graduate and trying to sign on for a couple years as a graduate assistant at some of the schools. I mean, I know a lot of people, my friend over at Westchester, Larry Messler, that was the route he took with it. And it helped him out greatly because he got 2 years of hands-on actual work before he ever applied for a job, a full-time job. And so he got 2 years, helped pay for his master's degree, and basically put him right in the running for a job here at Immaculata as soon as he was out of school. He actually had two opportunities, and this was the one he chose because he was an undergrad alum of Immaculata, and then he was able to get the opportunity to go back. So that was something he really wanted and was able to do.
Yeah, and going off what Andy said before I give my 2 cents as well, at the time when I was at Widener, our grad assistant, he's a great kid, and he did a couple years as the grad assistant at Widener. He then was the SID for a conference, the East Coast Conference, which is a Division II conference. He was the communications guy over there for a couple months, and now he's working with the Washington Commanders in sales. So you never know where this career can take you, but I would just say make connections. Anybody can have connections. Say yes to everything. Don't be like, well, I'm better than whatever job I'm looking for. No, take everything you're offered. You never know who's going to get connections. Make a LinkedIn profile. If you do not have one, make a LinkedIn profile. You don't have to go to premium if you don't want to, but make one so you're on the internet. Make it as polished as you can and just say yes to everything. Even if you don't go the way I did with all the emails, you never know who's going to say yes. You never know who's going to give you that one opportunity.
As someone who has interned here with the sports information team, I can tell you, do everything you can to help everyone out and get all the experience you can get. But that was really good, guys. Good to be on this side of the interview for once. And we'll be back after this quick break on the Tuesday Talk IU Athletic Podcast.
And welcome back to the Tuesday Talk IU Athletics Podcast. I hope that interview segment was a good one. Connor did a good job interviewing us, and we hope we provided you a good background as to what we do in athletics communications and sports information here. And if anybody has insights or anybody's interested in having a conversation with us, we're always available. We can be found on the internet and in our office here and everything like that, on our emails. And once again, I hope everybody enjoyed. It was a good show this week, guys. I think we're all looking forward to a little bit of a break this weekend with the Easter break, a couple of days off, chance to kind of recharge the battery for that final stretch of the season as things are starting to wind down. And we're going to continue running the podcast through the season into the end of the season, and then we'll probably take a break for the summer before we come back in the fall. Maybe over the summer, if something special happens or different events or anything, we would jump on. But we're looking forward to continuing the show, and we'll be having some discussions in the upcoming weeks about the Maxpies are going to be coming up with our banquet and awards ceremony and everything. So looking forward. We'll have some discussion about that too. Hope you'll join us next week on the Tuesday Talk IU Athletics Podcast. Roll Max.